Hi, my name's Rory Flynn, and today I'll be demonstrating Trade Talk, and the purpose of this demonstration is to showcase the product and talk a little bit about the development and the features and how the project came to be. So Trade Talk's basically an e-learning multimedia product. You can read a bit more about it there, but it's basically designed to support apprentices, first year general construction students, in skills needed in their workplace, specifically numeracy, planning and communication skills. And this differs from traditional resources in that the learning is in the context of a workplace, and it makes the learning we try to make the learning as authentic as possible and create context-based scenarios. There's a lot of OH&S covered through it, but the focus is on the learning rather than the actual OH&S content, but it made it relevant to the students.
Welcome to Trade Talk.
So welcome to Trade Talk, and we'll be going through the concept of context-based scenarios a fair bit in this demonstration. So now a bit of background on the project. We'll go into acknowledgements. So it was funded by DEWA, Education, Employment and Workplace Relations, under an initiative called the WELL program, and the aim of the initiative was to support sectors, industry sectors where literacy and numeracy levels of apprentices were below the expectation of the industry, so that was identified for building and construction. So we had a steering committee overseeing, because it's all the content had to meet competencies from Certificate 3 within the General Construction Training Package, which was nationally recognised training. So all the checks and balances needed to be there to make sure it could be used all over Australia. And then the Gordon Institute of TAFE won the contract to develop the product, so a project team was assembled predominantly of Gordon Institute of TAFE staff, but we also brought in industry experts and subcontractors for some of the work. So that's some of the background. One of the important aspects of this project, which I'll talk about briefly, was the Gordon was trialling a new methodology for e-learning. Traditionally, this was the model that we used for developing e-learning and multimedia resource, which was sitting down with content experts, grabbing all their expertise, and the education and instructional designers working out how that would be delivered online, and then with some minimal consultation with the multimedia designers, and then into the production. And it was a very linear type of model, and there were quite a few problems happen with that, in that if something's not working at the production end, usually there's too much of the work has been done in expertise and design to change it. So Roland Maxwell from Boojum came on board for this project and introduced rapid prototyping, where content experts and educational designers and the multimedia designers worked together at the start very quickly to establish what ideas were feasible and which ones weren't, and it meant that we could very quickly mock up ideas, give them back to the content experts to validate, to ensure that how their ideas have been interpreted through this cycle were feasible and could be achieved. And I'll talk later on through the project about the advantages of that, but it was also really good for the project manager, because some ideas that were feasibly too large to produce could be headed off at the pass. So we stay within budget, within timelines, a lot more effectively. So that's just a bit on rapid prototyping. So how Trade Talk is intended to be used, because it's not a complete course, it's just a whole heap of online activities. We developed this trainer guide which describes to the trainers more about the products. These are online activities that can be used instead of or to supplement class activities or traditional paper-based resources. And it's also not an assessment tool. The whole idea is for teachers to use some of the activities and some of these resources to introduce ideas, revise skills, build knowledge in preparation for assessment. So this is lots of nuts and bolts, really handy on the delivery of the product. It's intended to be delivered online or on CD-ROM, and we're running for the CD-ROM here. It's got these are little document map here to give you some clues as to what it's all about, but you can see all the competencies here, the list of competencies here from Certificate 3. It tells you about the learners. They're generally 15 to 19 year olds with low language literacy skills. Trainers can be training providers or people in the industry, and some of the outcomes. Lots of good pedagogical information here. Technical requirements, resource files. Now some suggested approaches on how they can be used and blended strategies. And very handy, these activities, because without even reviewing the product, a teacher can go in, decide what sort of what performance criteria they're wanting to deliver, and actually just pick out single activities and what supporting resources need to be printed out or provided to the students before that activity. And I'll go right to the end. Even more complex is the competency mapping, which pulls directly out of the Certificate 3 the performance criteria and what activities actually map to these specific competencies, which some of the trainers just absolutely love this. You can see that not everything can be covered in this product. That's why it wasn't intended to be an assessment tool. If it was, every single one of these would have to be covered off through the project. Now, along with the trainer guide and all the resources for the trainers, there's also resource files for students. And the resource files is basically all the content that sits behind the product. This is your traditional workbook if you weren't using a online product, a printable workbook, and takes the students through all the content that is covered in the performance criteria. So there's the actual content there, and then some exercises and questions, and all things that can be delivered in class, or and answers there as well if teachers or trainers wanted to use it within a classroom. It can all be pulled out, and it's also there if students are getting a bit lost on a subject when they're going through the product. They can refer to these documents and do their own little self-evaluations, and then check how they're tracking with the answers, just to further explain the concepts. Okay, so now we're going to start the product, and when you press the logo you come into the main entry screen, and this is the hub for the product. We have hints over here. If students get lost, they can refer to that, and we have that bubble on there straight up just to draw attention to it. The scenarios split into domestic worksite and commercial worksite. Domestic has all the numeracy tasks or the numeracy scenarios. It's a mixture of communication, planning, and numeracy, but it has numeracy bias. And when a student comes in from the website, this is set up as a linear approach, which means that once they only have activity 1 to choose from, and as they progress, each new activity unlocks, and then they can only go back and review the activities that they've completed. We're in teacher mode at the moment, which means that all of these are unlocked, which means it's non-linear, and we can choose singular activities or go from one specific point. There's sub-scenarios where this is more focused on flooring. This one's painting, building plans, and that's where these dark lines come in. But in general, it is designed to be one long linear story. So that's numeracy, and communication tasks follow the same route, set up exactly the same way with sub-scenarios and major scenario. And there's also progress, so as each activity is completed, that progress is tracked, and I'll show you how that works a bit later on once we've done a few activities. And it's time to get started.